Hey, welcome back, and thank you for joining us for another episode of God's Glory and Men's Real Stories. I'm your host, Robert Moore. As always, you're in for a treat with a community I want you to see as your own, and a place I hope you can consider a safe space for everyone to feel seen and understood in the stories and conversations you hear today. So please relax in hopes that you can feel God's love as well as see God's glory in men's real stories, all right? So my special guest today is a brother who I believe has got to know me more than I have got to know him. Because for a while back ago, I actually would say, he interviewed me on his podcast, For the Masses podcast. And I'm excited to have him here with me today. So without further ado, I want to welcome my brother, Jonathan Barrett, to the show and community.
Woo!
Hey, what's up? How you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing well, bro. That was an amazing intro. You're an experienced podcaster, and now it was beautiful. It was beautiful.
I'm not even gonna lie. The introduction is probably the hardest part,
For sure.
I believe, of any podcast. Now, that's me personally, because you kind of want to make sure you say the person's names right. You want to make sure that you kind of get those details in there without over detailing it. So, normally that's the one part. Once I get through that, I'm just like, oh, now we're smooth selling. It's just, it's easy from there. It's all downhill from here now. So,
No, for sure.
Yeah. So, no, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself. You know how it goes. Share with my community a little bit about yourself. Who is Jonathan Barrett?
Yeah, bro. So I'm from Brooklyn, New York originally, way of Richmond, Virginia, now residing in DC. I'm a military guy, a wrestler. I've been in church my whole life. And
Okay.
both of our shows are, about spreading righteousness and God's glory, and that's what I'm striving to do every day as a man.
That's
And
awesome. That's awesome.
much.
Well, we're definitely going to scratch the surface on that today, just to kind of understand how that looks in your life, how that's looked in your story, and just where that has you nowadays. Because I have learned that when you're on the opposite side of the life you may have lived at one time, when you're walking in righteousness, when you're seeking God's face, when you're seeking the purpose that He has for your life sometimes gets harder. Life starts to throw things at you that weren't thrown at you before. You start to experience certain things that it's just like, okay, wait. This was a lot easier when I was living a different life, when I wasn't seeking God, when I wasn't trying to understand what His purpose and His plan for me in life was. So, I hope to be able to maybe scratch the surface with that today, just to kind of understand what your life has looked like. So let me start off with saying, I noticed you brought up that you've been in wrestling. How long have you been wrestling?
Yeah, so I started wrestling in ninth grade, bro, and I did that from ninth to 12th, and then I got recruited, wrestled in college, coached Division II. Played the team I coached. We probably placed at the highest, number 2 in the nation, probably close to like 10 All-Americans.
Very cool.
So heavily involved with the sport, and it's only by the grace of God that I was able to like ascend to the heights that I was able to, because like ninth grade, is really, really like late for the sport. So yeah, and in general, like that's just my mindset towards a lot of stuff. It shaped us a lot with wrestling, and I'm excited to jump on your show for many reasons, but to also become more vulnerable. You inspired me. You encouraged me to like, hey, you told me vulnerability is your superpower.
Yeah.
And I've been hearing that a lot in my life, including from my girlfriend. She really like encourages me and empowers me to be vulnerable. She said, "There's more there, John." And she's very prophetic, and like God talks to her. And like just a very strong in her faith, and it's encouraging. So I was very looking forward to the show more than I think you knew.
Nice. Okay. Well, now I'm really excited now because, vulnerability is a hard thing to give people. I tell people that all the time. It's not as simple as you think, or everybody would be vulnerable and they would realize how our vulnerability is where true intimacy is. It's the true version of intimacy. I mean, as I tell people, sex is cheap. Vulnerability is where you really scratch the surface on intimacy, especially in a couple, whether it's a platonic couple or whether it's a couple looking to grow together, whether it's two friends sitting down wanting to have a conversation to better understand each other. There's a space to where people can better understand your story and better understand you when you're vulnerable enough to share with them a little bit about you that will allow them to see to say, I see it. Okay, I understand now. And I appreciate you sharing that with me so that now I can maybe go about things a little bit different because I understand you a little bit better.
For
So
sure, my
so what do you
brother.
want to start today? I mean, as I tell people, it's like water here. It's just, there is no questions, there is no set list, there is nothing. It's just a matter of like, hey, where would you like to start today with the conversation?
Yeah, and like if like first off, I definitely want to like say like you're an amazing orator. You definitely have, God has a calling for you in this. So keep on doing it,
I
A,
appreciate it, bro. Thank you for
right?
that.
And then B, God's telling me to tell you right now, like, time to hit on the gas. Time to hit on the
Mm,
gas. All right.
mm,
And
okay.
because what you're doing is very needed. You immediately came into this podcast space with a niche,
Right.
and some of us it takes a while to do that. So yeah, so that's telling me to tell you to keep on going. You have the
Okay.
means, you
Okay.
have the
I'll
effort.
receive it. I'll receive it. I'll
So
receive it.
and that was just now, but
Okay. All right.
you
I'll
know
take
I,
it. I receive it. I appreciate that.
I'm not going to deter from the vulnerability that I think God is calling me to do, because it's crazy, bro. The last week or so, I've been meeting men who are just so open with like their lust addictions, their food addictions, like things us as men we don't normally address because we have to be perfect, right? And I think
Mm.
with me is I grew up in a church. I'm a PK. My dad's a minister, and
What?
yeah, so there's a lot of like, and then also my temperament. My temperament is very like, it's like, hey, I expect John to do the right thing if no one else is. And
Mm.
it's like I grew up in a church, grew up in Brooklyn, New York, went down to Richmond, Virginia. So I'm a PK, right? I told you that, but imagine being a PK. So for everyone listening, a PK is preacher's kid.
Right.
So I grew up as a PK, but my mom and my dad were never married. So you
Mm.
immediately have like this conflict in your life. So not only was my mom and my dad never married, my mom and my dad, for whatever reason, had some type of falling out. And my dad wasn't in my life for the first half of my life. So I didn't meet my dad till I was 13, 14. My dad is a
Mm.
PK.
Wow.
So
This
yeah, yeah,
this episode is going to be very interesting for everybody that knows me because there you just wow you just yeah okay all right this is going to be interesting, just know
yeah,
that.
yeah, my
Okay,
brother.
okay. So what I'm just curious. With that being
Yeah.
said, then what how did with you not meeting your dad till you were 13, 14, how and you knowing that he was a pastor,
hmm
how did that affect your relationship with God?
So I think the mindset I've always had is that like I always knew God was real. Always knew God was real. And I knew my dad was a preacher after I met him. Right.
Mm,
I saw him when we went to go visit him for the first time when I was 13 or 14, and he had a collar on. He had
okay.
a collar on. So my mom was extremely like spiritual woman, like had a relationship with God. No, everyone knew her as she was the Jesus lady. And so no matter what stage or where I lived, we went to church, right? And it got to a point though when my mom, she told me that, John, you got to know for yourself. And this is why I say that like I never questioned if God was real, because there came to a point when I was 12, 13, 14 when I wanted to act out, and she said, John, you got to know for yourself. I can't make you. The most loving
Mm,
thing my mother ever did for me, because it allowed me to be in a stage of like I had to figure it out for myself. So sixth, seventh, eighth grade, I got introduced to like sex, drugs,
mm,
my friends dying, like all these things that like you would think. Well, some people sixth, seventh, eighth grade, that's too young. But inner city environments, that's pretty much the age. So I started getting in trouble, started acting out to fit in, because Jonathan, you
mm.
didn't have identity in Christ, which I know now. Jonathan didn't have an identity. He just wanted to fit in. He was a timid young boy, so he tried to fit in by acting hard, by acting
By
up, trying to
mimicking
like
your
get
mimicking
girls.
what you were seeing, so you could be accepted.
Absolutely. And that was like my sixth, seventh, eighth grade years. When I tell people that now, they don't even believe me. They're like, John, you talk like this. You probably grew up in the suburbs. But yeah, no one really understand what it's like growing up like that. By the way,
Growing
but
up like what? Now, hold on. You got to explain that a little further because,
oh,
man, you are on a roll today. I cannot.
hey, came
Go
came
ahead,
up
go
here to be
ahead, go ahead. This
vulnerable.
is good. This is really good. So, what was it? And when you say people who kind of were confused, was it your demeanor growing up in an inner city with maybe like the way you spoke?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Talk
it's
about
like
it.
I grew up in all inner city environments. Like I'm talking like places where I didn't meet white people. I literally didn't meet a white person until college.
Okay.
In my high school we probably had two or three. Maybe a coach or two. Everything. So that was my interactions with like white people essentially. Mostly just like black and Hispanic. And
Okay.
I grew up in these environments, and a lot of people don't talk like me, or quote unquote proper, or you talk white, or whatever the case is, and so it's like you get a certain level of, I don't want to say bullying, but it's like a certain level of like you have to prove yourself. So I grow up from being a kid to you know high school. I mean middle school, high school even, and I just wanted to prove myself. So then we're talking about performance. Now you got
Right.
performance to meet,
Right.
which probably is the reason I excelled a little bit in wrestling, because you're just performance based mindset.
Right. Right.
Yeah, my brother. And you're
Wow.
you're you're nodding. You're nodding. You relate to this?
Man, listen, you are all in my business right now. Like
Yeah.
so the beauty of knowing people but not really knowing people. Like me and you, we met through social media,
Yep.
and I offered your audience and you my vulnerability through my story and just sharing so much on your podcast.
Yeah.
But what you don't know right now is that so far every bit of your story is my story.
Wow.
And I didn't know this till you started sharing. So like preacher's kid, that would be me too.
Wow.
Growing up with a father who wasn't in my life, who was divorced from my mom, that would be me too.
Wow.
Um, Growing up not having my dad in my life the way I needed him, that would be me too. So
Wow.
everything you have said so far, if nobody else is like, it doesn't resonate with me. Yep. Well, guess what? And it's funny because I can see my sister watching this and just saying, oh, wow. Oh, this is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Like he's going to
Yeah.
trigger him off the charts right now. But which is why my first question was, what did that say to you when it came to like how you viewed God, seeing as though your dad had a great relationship with God, maybe not so much a great relationship with you.
Yeah. 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 And I think the naivety of the situation was what preserved that relationship with God, or my perceived relationship with God.
Mm,
Because I obviously I grew up in a church, but I didn't really know. I was still trying to have sex. I was still trying to fit in,
hmm
and like I never did drugs or anything, but your sin of choice, as you would
hmm
say.
hmm
And there's something you talked about in your testimony on my show, that I resonated with too as well. I'm not gonna touch it now because it comes later in the story.
Right.
But my relationship with God, like I said, I was always the type of guy. My mom said I got to go to church, so I got to go to church, and that it fit my temperament. It fit who the world thought Jonathan should be or is, and
Right.
it resulted in me hiding from like the whatever desires, whatever sins that I wanted to do. I was so secretive.
Mm,
I'm talking like extremely secretive, to the point where I was like, I didn't realize that vulnerability is the thing that help us connect to people, more than anything, you know.
right.
And the best story we can think about is like Adam and Eve after they bit the fruit and they hid because they were afraid. And it's like, why are you afraid? Because you were naked.
Mm.
And being naked, you hide yourself from God because of shame, because of guilt, and you get disconnected from God. you
Right.
know
This is
and
good.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
no, it is so true. I feel like I was just hitting on that recently. So I'm loving that you're saying this right now because yeah, I mean, the as I told some as I was sharing recently that, when Adam and Eve bit that apple, fear immediately entered the hearts of men. And
yeah,
so they hid. And
they
they were
did.
ashamed and they realized they were naked, and so they covered up. And a lot of us begin our cover up, as you were saying, when we get into middle school,
Yeah,
where we realize how we look is not accepted maybe by others. So we start to take on facades. Start to take on characteristics that allow us to blend in with everybody else.
yep,
That is when, and I'm sure it happens well before then, based on experiences and whether it be traumatic experiences or just experiences that tweak us in a way. But that is when we begin to realize, like, wow, I'm naked out here and nobody appreciates the authenticity of who I just am without covering up. So let
yep,
me start to put together these these fig leaves to cover up, to look a
yeah,
certain way. I'm going to wear this, I'm going to say this, I'm going to move this way. So no, this is good. Yeah. So go ahead. I'm going to let you continue. This is
yeah, my
yeah.
brother. And so yeah, just at a young age, hiding, man, hiding, because I didn't want to get bullied for talking that a certain way. So I put on the hat of hood trap star, wore oversized t-shirts, and decided to get some antics, to hide who I really am. And really I am, I was really timid. I spoke a certain way, that people notice immediately,
Right.
which I know now is an asset, right?
Right. Yeah,
Right,
no.
is an
But
asset
back
now.
then you felt like you had to downplay or downgrade your vocabulary. Let
Yep.
me take on some words that, even though my the way I pronounce it is very proper, I'm going to still try to use the same slang to
Yep.
try to blend in.
Yep.
I'm right there with you.
Don't even sound right saying it.
Right. Right,
Don't even
right,
sound right saying it.
right.
This for a reason, John. You know,
Yeah.
and so yeah, like a very explorative period. But my relationship with God, to get back to the original question, was like it was still intact. I like my mom was such a strong woman of God, and like she really like helped us to like really know what that means. And so I just really just like love being a Christian young man. And at the same time, I wanted to fit in when I'm not in church. So just trying to fit in, man, just trying to fit in, just trying to fit in.
So would you say that it was is it fair to say that you were living two different lifestyles? You were living the John at church
Yeah,
and the John at school.
for sure. And
Okay.
and and I would say I would take a step further and say I was hiding from who I really was, or who I thought I
Mm,
who I had who I knew I should be in God. Whatever identity God gave me, I was hiding it. Even in church, messaging, sexting girls like in church, like we're gonna go in the back and like make out at church.
wow.
This is like the deepness of like hiding who you are just to fit in. Because me, I didn't smoke, I didn't drink. I'm like, I'm a Christian dude. I don't smoke, I don't drink. And till this day, I never have. But so like John, how can you be cool? How can you fit in? Status.
Mm.
What status in our community?
It,
Having a
it
lot
depends. You're
of
right.
women.
Well, you know what? Status looks so different in so many different areas. I mean, it could just be
Oh
that,
yeah.
hey, look, I've got a lot of money. They said if I have a lot of money, then
Yep.
I am that guy. Or if I have a lot of women, I am that guy. Or if I have flashy things, if I own a car of some sort, or if I own chains or whatever, then I am that guy. So it just depends on which angle you want to take it.
Yep.
And normally, as you said, to have women, you got to have sometimes possessions,
Yep.
or at least that's what we're sold to believe. So yeah, I mean, yeah, wow. So go
All,
ahead and tell our story. Continue.
all of the above, bro. All of the above. So I place my value in status, or women, like, oh, JB, you got her. Oh wow, like, hey, JB, like, you got two girls. Oh man, like, and it's very hedonistic, and it really was like in the moment. I had no idea. I was just trying to hide. I was trying to like be who the church tells me I am, be who my mom tells me I am, be who like my siblings think I am, and just to really go in that direction. And it was that way for a lot of my life,
Mm.
but I thank God because he always gave me a mind though that wanted to, whatever I focus on is what I did, you know and so when I was in middle school, if I wasn't playing sports, I was focused on women, focused on fitting in, and that's what I did. And then I went to high school, and I went to a military school. I was in that period of like trying to fit in, and I went to go shadow at this school to like to see how it was. I got in trouble like multiple times during that one day, and they said I couldn't come to the school anymore. So knowing me, that made me want to go there more. So my mom scheduled an appointment with the principal and the cadre we had there, and she was able to give me in on probation. So I went to a military school, and it was an amazing experience. Franklin Military in Richmond, Virginia. Went there for 4 years. We didn't have sports teams, so I went to the local high school to play sports. I played football. Was little, and I didn't have a name coming in, so I didn't really play as much, But I started wrestling because I saw some guy who was the same size as me, doing work, and I was like, I can do that if he's can doing it, And I just did it. The coaches immediately took interest in me. And what was that? What was that? Filling a father void that I didn't have before,
Yeah. No, I wasn't gonna say it, but yeah, no,
based off
no.
performance.
Right, right.
Yeah,
And okay, so I got a question. Was the performance to try to get his attention when he wasn't paying any attention, or wasn't seen, in a manner of speaking?
absolutely. And there's a story about that. So when my dad came back into my life, he brought me and my sister. I have a twin sister.
You
We
have
we
what
came to
now?
New York. I have a twin sister.
Okay, how many siblings do you have?
I have four total. Four
Okay,
total.
okay,
Yeah, and plus me. So I have a twin sister, a little sister, older brother, and then I have a half sister. Well, I have two more half sisters too. But
got it.
crazy about that story too.
I don't know if we have the time, but
Yeah,
yeah, come on, let's
that's
let's
crazy.
go.
But so he brought us to New York, and it's like the first time meeting him. I'm like, this dude, he's just like really condescending. He thinks he knows everything, and I was like, oh man, maybe that's where I get that aspect of the personality from.
Right.
But he looked. I told him I got football practice. He looked at me and he told me, "No, you don't. You're scared."
Ah.
Yeah, and
Okay. Okay. So, okay. So might I ask, what did that in turn tell you then with him saying that to you? Like because there's always what we hear and then there's what we tell ourselves.
you're not worthy. You're not good enough. You're not it. You're not worth. The reason I wasn't in your life is because you're not good enough, John. Because I wasn't in your life because you're not worthy enough. Wherever the situation was, whether that was true or not, that's how I perceived it. And
Mm,
again, I told you that knowing me, I said knowing me earlier, I wanted to prove them wrong. So that was like my mission from that point on, to prove my dad wrong. Um,
mm,
and that pretty much drove my performance type of mentality, like for a good portion of my life. And so yeah, so wrestling performance based. So now I got performance based. Now I got these other men who are taking more interest in me than my own father, right? And I get a spark, So I get a spark. Have a really sickening work ethic for like 4 years, and wrestling took me into, paid for subsidized my college, paid for my masters, and I'm forever grateful. And met a lot of impressionable, met my mentors, my spiritual directors, a lot of people who just was able to pour into me, you know.
mm.
Yeah, and
Wow.
yeah, so yeah,
Yeah,
very
it's
interesting
okay.
story.
So yeah, I mean, wow. Okay, so with based on what your father said, it basically lit a fuse in you, and
Yeah.
it ran you all the way through college, in a constant performance mode. When did you realize that your drive and everything was to perform for others?
25. 25 years. I'm 29 for context.
Okay. Okay.
4 or 5 years ago. Yeah, man.
Mm.
And it took me a long time because it was got to the point, and I also have OCD. So like OCD, like very ritualistic OCD. So I do rituals, and I pray a lot, and when I pray a certain way, and it takes a certain amount of time, and it compounds. So I have that. So when I get
Okay.
into something, I really like do it. So that's how it was for me in like performance aspects, to
Okay.
the point where like I can't let myself rest, and then just like, so 25 was the time I finally started getting therapy after a breakup. And we could talk about that, what
that's
that does for men.
that's about right.
Yeah.
What?
That's about right.
That's about right. I mean, I'm pretty sure that just resonated with a ton of people right then. Just
Oh,
like bam, yeah. Well, yeah. After normally after a life changing situation, breakup, divorce,
yeah.
normally those hit that target where you're like, I need to go see somebody before I just throw in
Yep.
the towel, or and normally it's not so much that one situation. It's a compilation of things that have
Yeah.
been building up. They've all been building up, and they've been sitting on top of each other, and you've been pushing them down, and you've been pushing them down, and finally that last thing just won't fit. It's just too heavy, and everything falls out, and you're like, all right, well, what am I gonna do with all this? And that's when we find that space to say, I got to go see somebody to help me deal with all this stuff that I'm looking at now that spilled over because of that one thing that finally just tipped the scale.
Yeah. And it sucks that it has to be like that, but it's all a part of like God's plan and his way of molding us.
Mm-hmm.
And before we get into like that 25, that pivotal moment for me, like emotionally, mentally, spiritually, it was culminating. Like you said, it was really culminating. And something like you said when you were on my show, you was like, you called yourself a cheater. You called
Yeah.
yourself a cheater, and I was like,
Cheater, manipulator,
John, you're a
liar.
cheater, manipulator, liar, all these different things. Up until that point in my life, I wasn't faithful to not one woman. Cheated
Mm,
on every girlfriend that I ever had up until that point in time.
mm,
And again, it was for status, like again, manipulation, like all these different things, and just
mm.
like using women for like sex and like just all these things that are becoming. And then again, in the back of my mind, Jonathan, you're a preacher's kid. John, you're boldly making proclaiming Jesus Christ, and you're doing things unbecoming of a child of God.
Basically, you're saying that you're rooted in God, but your fruit doesn't show any type,
Mm,
doesn't show that you're actually
not
tapped
even a
into
little
what
bit.
God is wanting to use you for,
Yeah.
tapped into to showcase His fruit.
Yep.
Instead, if it's almost like you're growing fruit, but it's bad fruit. It's fruit that doesn't showcase any parts of what God's doing through you.
Yep. It's like, yeah, it doesn't, and it may, like, for a brief period of time you're able to balance both, but at a certain
And how
point
so? Explain that to me. Like when you say balance both.
so I felt like in the midst of all that, so like again, like fornication, adultery, just a whole bunch of lustful carnal desires, like from ninth grade all the way on to probably like 11th grade all the way on to that 25 part. I felt like God still was calling me. Like he always called me back to ministry, bro. Always. Literally. Like when I transferred schools, I went to a small group, and I just went, and I always shared, the gospel, like whatever God put on my heart to share with people, and our spiritual director, our campus ministry, uh, minister, I guess you would call him. He asked me to be a peer minister. So that means I'm leading small groups. I'm doing these things around campus with my fellow students to, help spread the gospel, to help, help bring people to God.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, man, so like then I get the opportunity once I graduate to become a resident minister. right? So then I'm a resident minister, and so basically I'm like I'm on campus. One of the ministers work for campus ministry, but it's crazy because I literally remember leading a small group and I was sleeping with someone in a small group. Imagine again, again.
Okay, so let's and this might rub some people the wrong way.
Yep.
You say that you were leading a small group. You were whatever you want to put the name on it, pastor. You were the youth pastor, or whatever. You were leading a small group, and you were sleeping with somebody in that small group.
Mm-hmm.
That is not
or eventually did.
that is not far off, unfortunately, from the rap a lot of pastors have gotten.
Yeah.
And it's sad. It's something I have seen personally in my past, just to make sure I reference that. And I realize that a lot of times people, they say, okay, well, I'm a pastor's kid, so I'm supposed to be a standard. I'm supposed to set a standard, or I'm a pastor. I'm supposed to set a standard. But we fail to realize that whether we're looking at them or they're looking at themselves, I'm a human as well.
Yeah.
And as long as I have these flaws, as long as I have these lustful desires, as long as I have this sin in me, because as we've already discussed, sin and fear entered the hearts of men. When it did that, that meant that we were never supposed to be perfect.
Yeah.
The obtainable perfect, status that we try to hit, it was never attainable. So we try to hold ourselves to these plateaus, these pedestals. But the truth is that there are pastors who fall short every day, all day. And it doesn't have to be as big as like dealing with somebody in their congregation or in their small group. It could be other sins, because they all equal out to the same thing. But a lot of times people look at them in a different light and say, well, no, I didn't expect that from you. But why not? He's human just like you. Why not? Why did you not expect that from him? Yeah. Why are you expecting him? Like people put a lot of pressure on pastors to be better than, wiser than, instead of realizing they're human and they're going to make mistakes. They're going to fall short. They're going to, and it may not look the way you may fall short, but regardless, they are human.
Yeah.
And they're flawed. So, when I started realizing that myself personally, at that point, I started realizing that I was looking at people and expecting them to be perfect because of what their title was.
Yeah.
And that's hard. It's hard enough for them. It's even harder when everybody expects them to be that.
Absolutely. And the only person who did that perfectly is Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And it sounds like a cop out when I say this, because I share that with you about my past, and well, a whole lot of people at this point, but
it's out there.
It's out there. Whew.
It's all good. It's all good. But
I tell them I'm not above reproach. And it's so crazy, because if I don't tell people that, they won't ever think about, oh, John, like he messed up, like, oh, I can't how can I do this? Well, because I'm a human being and I'm not above reproach. I'm not above correction, and and probably one of the keys that like I didn't have in that point in time either was community. I had community, but I had superficial community. I didn't have community to the point where I had friends like my buddy Robert Moore III to be like, yo, you're wilding, John. Like, what are you doing? I did have a buddy who kind of like suspected I wasn't, being my true self, but he didn't really he didn't really know. But like now, right. I have the type of community where I'll be like, hey guys, I did this, I looked at this today, and they're like, they'll pray for me, and no one will be like, so that's the real community that we need around us. That's like good. You said, I don't got no one real around me to tell me the truth.
Yeah. Right. I mean, and that's important. You need, like, I love how I was reading one time about David, about how in the Bible, Nathan came to him and was like, I'd like to tell you a story about a person who did something very evil, who did something that just would have rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And as he was telling the story, King David was like, "Oh, we should be off with his head. We should kill him." And then he finally was like, "That person's you." And it was just
Mm,
like, oh, how many people do we have in our lives that will hold us accountable?
yep.
That will say, "Hey, look, I'm not even perfect. I fall short. But even in my falling short, I expect you to hold me accountable, and I'm going to hold you accountable." And this is not a tit for tat. This is holding the other person to say, "I expected more of you. You're the righteousness of Christ. And even when you mess up, you're still the righteousness of Christ. So keep that in mind. And when you mess up again, you're the righteousness of Christ."
Yep.
And so every time reminding that person of who they are outside of what they've done,
Mm,
you know? And so, yeah, and that's important. That is so important, because think about when we do things, sometimes we beat ourselves up enough. Last thing we need is a friend who's going to come and be like, "Well, you did what?
mhm.
You did what? Come on, man."
Yeah.
Yeah, no, hey, save me that. I've already done that. I beat myself up already. Then I called you to hopefully be able to find a safe space like this one to say, "Bro, I messed up." And find people who can say, "Bro, let's pray about it." Or, "Bro, let's talk about it. Let's get it out. Let's talk about why you're doing that. Let's scratch the surface on that. Let's go deeper. Let's figure out what you told yourself that makes you continue to feel the need to do that." Because there may be something that has triggered in your mind to say, "If I don't do this, then I don't look this way, or I don't feel this way." And it could be a lie you told yourself. So yeah, you need those people around you that'll do that.
I know it's vital. It's imperative. Iron
Hmm.
sharpens iron, and like I
Yeah.
said, you get rusty and dull when you're not around community, and it's so important to the point where like now and this is the crazy part about like when you're covered and like God is calling you. You might have experienced this in your life too. I had a buddy. He said, "JB, like, what's going on? Like, you're doing X, Y, Z." He's like, "Yo, JB, we look up to you." And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not above reproach, and going that whole spill. And like, he tells me, he's like, JB, like, I do that, but you can't, we look up to you. Like, and I'm like, we're that deep that like, we're comparing ourselves to each other. And it's okay for one or the other to have like, you just didn't know about the things I wrestled with.
Right.
You just didn't know, and that's my fault for not being vulnerable. But yeah, it's just crazy. But I made a Facebook post about this probably like months ago, and I don't put anything on Facebook because I don't know. It's just wild that I did that. But I said I'm not above reproach. The only person who lived a perfect life here is Jesus Christ. So have grace for your clergy, your politicians, and everyone during this time.
Mm.
And that's what it's about. It's about like providing that grace, that Jesus Christ gave us. So grace has allowed me to be able to talk like this, right? Grace allowed me to like finally put that shame and that guilt that entered the world when Eve bit the fruit. So yeah, man. So like, yeah, a lot of things that people don't know, struggle with. But again, we do also recognize that we as men we're called to be leaders, be these things. And just because we have this gift called grace doesn't mean we can't strive to be like Jesus Christ. And that's
Right.
something what I'm continuing to do daily, and to be able to get past those things, and and it's a blessing. My girlfriend, like, she really just like kind of like speaks that into me, and I
Mm.
thank God
That's
for it
good.
because she doesn't judge me for it.
That's good.
Even in times when I would probably judge her or harsh to her, because of my insecurities of like not dealing with the hurt, with the trauma, with the just like always wanting validation from the outside world when your identity is not in Christ.
That's good. That's so real. That's so real.
Yeah, man.
That's so real. And it's funny because I remember earlier you said, why is it that we get into these spaces to where we don't, like, whether it be go to God, go to therapy, until the world falls apart for us, until we hit that dead end, until we just don't see a reason to get back up again. And it's funny, right before our episode, I literally was just writing this on my tag board, and it says there is purpose in the storm. And the thing is sometimes it takes us going into a storm, experiencing a storm, for us to get to that notion where I need to do something different. I
Yeah.
need to go to therapy. I need to go and seek some counsel. The purpose in that storm was supposed to happen for us to find our way to where we got. But if it hadn't been for that storm, if it hadn't been for that breakup, if it hadn't been for that divorce, whatever may have happened in your life, then you would have never reached the purpose of where you're striving to get, where God has a plan for you, what he wants to do in your life. So, yeah, sometimes we got to experience that storm as much as it may suck. So I'm curious, where did your relationship with your father end up taking you? I mean, I could go all over the place because now I'm asking questions for a friend. That friend is me.
Yeah.
But where did your relationship with your father go after, like, you guys kind of came back together when you were older?
Yeah,
If you talk.
so yeah, bro. So like he like I said, he came into my life, he was doing all these things for me, like monetarily and like, superficially,
Mm,
and he made that comment to me, and I just remember being hurt by it, and I kind of like stored it away until I started therapy and kind of realized that, man, that was a shaping moment. What aided probably aided me in some ways, but also like wasn't like the best for relationships. And because you're expecting your partner to perform, like what?
right.
You're expecting your partner to do what you would do when you want them to do it by a certain metric. You're expecting them to
Right, right.
perform.
So you can never stop. You can never go. You can never, like, just take a day off. You have to
Yeah,
stay in performance mode. You have to stay in. And how can I perform for you again? What can I do to get your validation? What can I
yeah,
do to get your approval? What can I do to be seen?
yeah. And then projecting it on them. So you're expecting them to operate the same way. And
Yeah.
and then women aren't built to be able to do like that. Do that. They aren't built to bear that burden.
Okay. Now, why do you say that?
I think they bear the burden of not just performance, because I think they can definitely like switch out of windows quickly. Or like if our minds are Google Chrome, we have one tab open right now, but women will have
Right,
5 or 6 open at the same time simultaneously.
right,
But the burden of the harsh world, the harsh things that come with being a man, of like having your dad tell you, you're scared, and that being
right.
traumatized, the emotional energy it takes is a lot for women, and not in a chauvinistic way, but it's a lot. And I I never think it's our place as men to put that burden on a woman.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay. I can dig it.
it's heavy. It's heavy. Um, and it's so heavy that I'm 25 plus, and now I'm just figuring out that I have it, and then I'm trying to process it.
Mm,
So and that's been so 25 years, 25 years of not being able to handle that burden, and relationships going left and right for whatever reason. But yeah, so my dad at this point in time, and it's crazy because it's like a lesson, to don't push off today for tomorrow, because it really was like right after that visit, or a second visit to visit my dad in New York from Richmond, he had a few strokes. He had 1 stroke, 2 strokes, maybe like 3 strokes, and so to this day my dad's disabled. So he can't really talk the best. Can't really do a lot for himself as like he used to, so we have a relationship now that's like drastically better, But I can't sit down and hey, what happened? Where were you during these years? Hey, you remember you told me this? This is how it made me feel. Can you apologize, or can we talk about it, or anything like that? He can't. I can't get that, and he can't do that.
Hmm.
So I can only imagine how he feels.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah,
Ooh, that's wow.
yeah.
That's heavy.
Yeah, accepting that, and then so John, now you process this, you feel this way, and now you know how you feel, and you want to tell him, but you can't and even if you do tell him, it's just like you're telling him, he can't validate it in any way, so you have to accept it.
But I don't think that it's a bad thing to still have the conversation with them, even if you know that there may be no response. Because recently a while back ago, I read a book about how a lot of us need to write letters
Yeah.
to the people in our lives
Mm,
to express how we felt about past situations with them, the past that we experienced with them, the trauma that may have put on us, and how we felt about it, what it told us, and mail that letter to them or share that letter with them.
mm,
And because think about it, there are some people who don't get the opportunity to share what with their parents what they may have experienced, whether
yeah,
it be that their parents died, and then they have to grieve what they never had. Because I tell
yeah,
people it's important to grieve that child, that father and son duo that you were looking for, what you expected out of that mother or that father, how you expected childhood to look, what you expected them to look like. And we're always looking at these shows like growing up, like the Cosby Show and different things, where we're looking at a family where we just saw them during scenes. They never
mm,
showcase the scenes that we experienced, the fighting or the parent coming back. Hey, look, I'm sorry for me, for what I did, how I said that, how I approached you.
yeah,
We didn't get to learn how that looked during those scenes that never got captured, that were never in the script. So we didn't learn how to deal with the aftermath, the approach after the fact of how it's okay for parents to apologize. I'm sorry. I should have done better as a mother, as a father. I handled that situation incorrectly. I wish that I hadn't said that. There's a pride that keeps a lot of parents from doing that. And so it sends us on our way through life, just kind of like,
yeah. I agree.
well, I guess this is just what it is. And I'll become a parent one day that doesn't apologize and doesn't see the
Mm.
need. It's because I said so, and do as I say, not as I do. And all these different things that mold us again. It's like a reproduction.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
Uh,
And I'm definitely gonna pray about that. Yeah. I mean, it's something like I definitely talked about and thought about in the past and never really came back to it. So I appreciate you.
yeah. Yeah. No, it's just as I'm on this journey, I think we're both on that journey of being not only what God calls us to be, but being better, a whole person.
Yeah.
Meaning like coming home to ourselves, our authentic selves.
Yeah.
What did they call you when you were a kid?
Uh JB.
JB. So going back home to JB, like sitting with JB, the things
Yeah.
that you didn't feel safe doing or saying when you were a kid, so you just kind of like crumbled. Finding that safety in those things again, and letting him know it's okay. So hey, JB, look,
Mhm.
you know, like a lot of times we abandon our younger selves to be who we are now, not realizing that a lot of the keys to our purpose, a lot of the keys to God's plan in our life and everything, it was built into our younger selves.
Mm.
It was raw then. It was original then. It was like every piece of it was just like this is just who I am. The way I
Talk
talk,
about it.
the way I act, everything. It's just organic. This is me. And then we forget all about that stuff because he'll never survive in this world. He'll never be able to continue to act like that in this world. He won't make it. So I gotta let you go, bro. And
Mm. And that's real.
yeah, yeah, for a lot of us, and I feel like that's every piece of who you officially were. God knew about every piece. That little thing about the way you talk, about the way you smile, the way you act, the quirkiness, the goofiness. God made you exactly that way. It was a reason for that.
It was for a reason.
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. No, real talk, real talk. So how was the relationship with your mother growing up?
Oh, amazing! I was a mama's boy. You know, like I said, she was a passionate for Christ. Like she was your what you think of when you think of a Southern mother who goes to church and like literally live at church. Like we used to be at church 6 a.m. on Sundays all the way to like 9.
Yeah, we
And
were.
then literally like eat at church, go to the corner store, get some candy, then come back to church. And my grandma, she was actually a missionary in the church in the community too, led all the missionaries in the area, and we call her Grandma Barrett. And so they had a very like loving relationship. No
Mm.
matter what my dad was doing, because this is my dad's mom, and so my mom was very like impressed upon by her, and my mom just always like carried herself extremely well. So yeah, I was a mama's boy to the T, to the point where like up until I was a grown man, still like, mom, can you hold me? You know? Yeah.
That's cool though. That's cool. I mean, just because, yeah, every situation is different, and me growing up with my mom, it does. It creates a space to where we rely on mom to survive now. It's all we
Yeah.
got.
Yeah.
So that relationship should be the strongest relationship.
Oh my gosh, yeah. And then, I just like in love women because my sisters, I grew up with predominantly sisters, well, predominantly women, and my sisters are like, they pull on these heartstrings, like anything they want, they could always get from me. And to the point where like, my little sister, I know she's spoiled. And I'm like, man, even if she does the craziest thing in the world, she can get whatever she wants from her big brother. And I'm there for her. And I let her know that often, because we didn't have a dad. Right. So, I try to like also fill that void that, I didn't have in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And again, that goes back to like, performance and like, I don't know if it's detrimental to have a big brother who takes care of you like a father, but it's what I feel like I need to do. So yeah, very very good relationships with my sisters. My brother, I've been different, and he he is different from me, and a different generation. So we bump heads a lot, drastically different. His name is Moses.
Okay.
So yeah, so his name is Moses. My sister's name is Faith. My little sister's name is Grace. And me and Jonathan, the best friend of David. So like all of us grew up in the church, and everyone has their prodigal son story.
I
But
love those names.
for
I'm like, tell me your mom was in church without telling me your mom was in church.
for
Boom, 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 boom,
sure,
boom. Yep. Say less. That
for
was
sure,
that was good.
my brother.
I love that. I love that. That's
Yeah.
cool.
So
That's
yeah,
really cool.
it's been a blessing, and this is something I did want to like let people know in your show that like just because we're sinning doesn't mean we stop doing what God is asking us to do. Because there's pockets in our lives where we feel like, all right, this is gonna be a change, it's gonna be a change, and you relapse. But we gotta keep hope, and I think as we get older we stop believing, we stop having that hope, and hope, faith, perseverance, endurance, long suffering, those are the succession. And the best thing you can do to exercise faith is pay your tithes.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah,
All
you gotta pay.
right. Now you gotta break that down a little bit more. You
Yeah,
can't.
you gotta pay your tithes. So it's like, hey, you see things are not working. Like you're a Christian and you're going through all these things, and it's like, why, why do I got to keep doing these things? And the answer is you keep doing them. You keep doing them. You keep loving throughout the process. You keep you keep like someone hurts you, you just keep loving them. You keep loving them. You keep loving them, no matter what that looks like. And it's hard. It's a hard concept for us because we're not used to like having things that we don't see.
Right.
We don't we things we can't see. It's hard for us to keep going. You know. So it's like
Well, that's
you
why they
know.
say the opposite of faith is not fear, it's
Mm,
sight.
it's sight.
And when you can't, yeah,
So when you can't see it, so like the thing you can physically surrender on a regular basis because it's not yours, it's God's already. Is pay your tithes, and He'll put on your heart more and more and more and more and more and more and more, and so like even like all these like throughout this journey, I always try to pay my tithes and like I don't know why I was doing it at sometimes because like as a part of what I'm supposed to do as a Christian, like why am I
well,
paying
there's
tithes,
there's still a lot of Christians that don't pay tithes. So I mean,
Yeah, and
it-
and it's okay you know but it's more about like the act of like surrendering on a regular basis.
mhm.
What's not yours but what's
Well,
his.
surrendering as I look at it, is surrendering my finances. Like I'm saying,
Yeah.
God, I want to put you in charge of my finances.
Yes.
So I'm going to, by putting you in charge of my finances, I'm going to make sure you always get the first
For
10% of
sure.
every dollar I get. I'm putting you in charge of my finances. Now, don't get me wrong. Is tithing a requirement of a Christian? No, you can choose to not tithe. And that's that's a really good. I mean, I could probably open up my comments and say like, okay, so in the art of not giving God back what already belongs to Him, how does that affect my blessings all over? When it comes to finances, because I'm holding back what He's given me. What He's
Yep.
given me, I'm holding back a piece of what He's given me in the first place, and I think that may be where a lot of people fall short when it comes to like God's just not meeting my needs, and when it comes to finances, I'm falling short. But I don't know. That's a good one.
Yeah, and then think about this: what other aspects in your life or our lives are we able to physically give to God?
We can give him our praise.
Well, yeah. Well, like, but that's like not
Yeah, yeah,
physical.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
and that's probably my
like,
favorite one. I mean, I can give him I can give him the relationship he wants with me, and my
well, quantifiably physical.
yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes, yes, yes. So so you're right. Like outside of like our prayers, our praise, the relationship, and then the one thing that really hits, because that hits our pockets. And for a lot of people, when it hits your pockets, you feel that more than the time you spend with Him.
Yeah, and it's where your heart is. It's where a lot of our hearts are. So we can surrender to that. Like that's
Mm,
where our hearts lead.
mm.
And like it's like literally the only thing physically that you can do that like you can surrender. Because we can
That's so
say
good.
God, I surrender myself, but like what does that mean? What does that mean? What does it look like?
Ooh, I'm so glad you asked. What does that mean? Now, don't get me wrong. That is a huge one. To
Okay.
surrender. There are some people that will give their tithes instead of surrender their full life and say, I'm all in with you, God. Because in surrendering your life, that means you have to give up your plan to understand what God's plan is for you. That
Mm-hmm.
means you have to sit down and say, okay, God, I'm waiting for you to lead me, instead of just doing what I want to do and going where I want to go, and doing it how I want to do it. That means that if you're a control freak, you have to move based on like, okay, God, I'm gonna wait on you, and that may mean that I have to wait and just don't know which way I'm going, but just continue to do what I've been doing, and I don't know how long that could last. But knowing that you haven't failed me, you haven't left me, you haven't forsaken me. So surrendering yourself outside of surrendering your tithes and offering or tithes to God, that's a hard one. That's a hard one for a lot of people. That is. And then based on the doctrine of what your religion is saying that you have to do for God to love you. I mean, I've heard a lot of crazy stuff
Yeah.
that goes above the relationship He wants with you simply. But like, it's just that's a hard one. Like, so I can't smoke anymore. I can't drink anymore. I can't like there's some doctrines that say, hey, you can't do any of that. That's what surrendering your life to God is. And so that makes a person sit there and be like, I don't know if I'm ready to do that. I don't know
Yeah.
if I'm ready to give that up.
And it's real. And that's like literally the purpose of this walk. And Tori Deshawn, he's a Christian R&B singer. I guess you would say Christian R&B or Christian singer. I don't know. Well, anyways, he's on Spotify. But he has a lyric, and he said, God, I'm sorry. I'm a Christian, but I'm afraid to die. Man.
All right, that's a lot to unpack right there. Like,
Man, I'm a Christian, but I'm afraid to die. I'm like, lust won't stop me. Anger won't stop me. It won't hold me back. It won't hold me back. I'm a Christian, but I'm afraid to die. That's a bar.
Oh, that is okay. So we could spend another whole episode unpacking. I'm a Christian, but I'm afraid to die, because the truth is that as a Christian, in dying, I know that I'm leaving this earth to be with Christ. So if knowing that Christ is my Lord and Savior, I'm not actually dying. I'm just leaving this flesh, this body, the body that Jesus left, or actually didn't leave, because he ascended to heaven, but he went to heaven, and I can leave this body behind to go and be with him. And so as a Christian, I think that's probably one thing, not that we're rushing to do, but that every last one of us should look forward to spend an eternity with Christ. But like, I'm a Christian, but I'm afraid to die. Honestly, I would go as far as saying, hey, look, I'm a Christian, but I'm afraid that you're not pleased with what I've done as a Christian. So if I die today, I might not spend eternity with you.
Yeah. And or you desire what's going on here in the world too much to let go. And it's like, and I think that's what a lot of us struggle with, is like, hey, like the desires of our fleshly desires are greater than our love for God, and we can't let it go because we don't love God, or maybe we don't believe like we think we do.
I won't say we don't love God. I would say that we allow in our moment of loving God, we allow our flesh to be more in control than what God has promised us, what he has for us. We allow our flesh. It's almost like a fast. Okay. I've learned that in fasting, I am abstaining from food, but my body wants food. My body is used to food. So if I tell my body, I'm just going to give you water and that's it, my body's going to be like, we didn't have a meeting about this. I didn't know this is how this is supposed to look. So like, I want you to head to the refrigerator and get me something to eat. Matter of fact, you just went past those cupcakes, or you went past it, like, cause everything stands out to you when you fasting, and you have to say, flesh, I know you want that, but it's not happening. I'm not doing it. I'm not touching it. I'm not. It's same with choices of pivoting from who I've been to who I am now. I don't do that anymore. Yes, you know what? That's not to say that it's not still attractive to me. It's not to say that I don't find that appealing, but I don't do that anymore. Period.
I agree. I think I think those are the perspectives of like a Christian who's saved and someone who's not saved yet. So I think it's like, all right, well, hey, I'm a Christian. I'm ready to be born again. Like I'm giving my life to Jesus Christ. I'm born again. I'm willing to let it go. I'm willing to die to myself and then move forward. And I'm born again at this point. So I think it's like, all right, I'm walking this Christian walk now. And I think what he was referring to was like before he was saved type life.
Right. But then in that case, I mean, can you call yourself a Christian though?
Well, that's where I think the irony in the lyric is.
Yeah. Okay. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because I was like, we've all seen Christians who do all kind of things.
I just told you what I was doing, and like,
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
and
yeah. And the truth is it's not that you're less of a Christian or
yeah,
not a Christian.
yeah,
You've just sinned.
yeah,
And that's the beauty of God's for
yes,
forgiveness. That's the
yeah,
beauty of repentance. It's just a matter of recognizing that as I wrote recently, God has provided grace
yeah,
in our journeys, knowing that we're not perfect and we're going to fall short. So He's already provided the grace and mercy for the moments when we mess up and fall short, knowing that His forgiveness is attainable through
absolutely,
repentance. And so,
absolutely.
yeah, I mean, and knowing that you know that's the beauty of grace. It's like we don't deserve it, but man, what
Hmm.
will we do without it if He just said, "Oh yeah, 3 strikes, you're out."
Yeah, and I think that too, that the mindset is like, hey, like God loves me, and He's given me His only begotten Son, the Son of Jesus Christ, to die for my sins, because He loves me. And but like that's a mature mindset, and it's like we're working towards sanctification, the process of becoming holy, of becoming a
Mm,
saint, and we're going in that direction. We're trying to be
right,
more holy, more holy, more holy, more holy, to be as Christ like as possible. And I think like especially me, like before I really realized, hey, Jesus Christ died for me and my sins, and like really understand what that means. Done. It's like done, but it's renewing of the mind daily, being around community so we can talk about things like these, and like really
right.
walk in that direction, and that's how we start to become more holy, more holy, more holy.
I love that. I love that. That's good. And that's real. That's so real. That's so real. Well, hey, bro, look, I want, before we roll up out of here, because this has been a great conversation. And honestly, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking like there were so many things that we could have unpacked. I mean, there was
Yeah, yeah, dig
but,
deeper.
normally in a one segment sit down, it's like, man, like we could do this all day long. But I want you just to share a little bit with my guests, maybe how they can, tap in with your community, listen to, some of your podcasts as it's right over his shoulder for the masses. I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself so that my community can know how to tap in with you, and leave us with any last comments for sure.
Absolutely, my brother. First off, like I want to say, like, thank you for the opportunity. Like I said, there was a reason me and you met. A, B,
Definitely.
there was a divine connection in me seeing your sponsored ad on Instagram, and I'm more than grateful, because immediately the name that you had was so powerful. God's glory through men's real stories, like so powerful. It sticks out immediately. It has a niche, and like you're striving to grow the kingdom, and
Yeah, definitely.
kingdom men, kingdom men,
Yes. But more importantly,
because
letting them know that, hey, look, you're not alone on this walk. You're not supposed to be perfect, but there's other men that can share like you
hmm
have. Give everybody with your vulnerability, to let men realize that, like, wow, there is power in my vulnerability. There is,
and it's so true.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
so
So
true.
yeah, thank you.
And yeah, so I just gotta give you your flowers while you're here.
Appreciate
God
that,
forbid
bro.
nothing happens to you, but we have to do that more often, right? And
No,
yeah, so my show, For the Masses podcast, and we're looking to take people's successes, people's testimonies, people's stories in general, and how it's glorifying God, how we're being that city on the hill, how we're being a lamp on the shelf and not underneath the cover.
right,
And
right.
that's what it's trying to do, spread righteousness, and do it the right way by sharing our stories like this, because again, when we're vulnerable and we're telling people like what we've been through, we grow connected, we get more connected, and ultimately growing connected closer to God. So that's what we strive to do, and that's what the community is for. And
Yeah,
I'm grateful, because it's like less of me and more of him, so
yeah.
follow Christ and follow me if you want.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that. That's good. And that's so true. I love that. Well, I'll make sure
Yeah,
I'll put your information down below in the comments, because you're right. It starts with him, and following him is we always strive to gain more followers. We always strive to
yeah,
look a certain way, but the truth is if you're not following him, it doesn't matter about
it
whether you
doesn't
got
matter.
followers, whether you got, none of that stuff matters, because the truth of the matter is he put us both in a space to where we can continue to grow the kingdom, not grow our
Absolutely.
followers. So I love
Absolutely,
that,
my
bro. I
brother.
love that. Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you joining me today. I appreciate the time that you took because we both have been running through. I love how we both had juggled so many things getting to this episode
For
tonight. But
sure.
I appreciate you sitting in with me tonight. I appreciate the time. I appreciate your community and just what you have done as far as gifting me your platform to be able to share, as well as wanting to definitely have you here. And I love the conversation we had tonight. Learned so much about you and realized how much we are just alike. But as always, I want to thank all my followers for or all the listeners, followers, subscribers, whoever you are. I want to thank you for listening. I want to thank you for joining us for this conversation today. I hope that you can come back and truly sit in and just truly enjoy the gift of vulnerability that so many of the men share and offer you as a gift to truly allow you to be able to see yourself and understand that you're not alone. Understand that a lot of the stories, I learned this today, that a lot of the stories, they may resonate with you to help you realize that, wow, okay, so I'm not going about this alone. More importantly, we hope that you just feel seen and feel loved through all of this. Feel that God is truly still working in your life and he has a plan for you. So as always, thanks so much for everybody joining, and see you soon.
We appreciate you listening today and hope that if you enjoyed this episode, you'll like and subscribe and also listen to past episodes. We hope to bring you great future content as well. Please comment your thoughts on this episode as well as leave any prayer requests below so that this community can pray alongside you. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and Facebook at God's Glory and Men's Stories.
Brothers, we understand how the thoughts of even facing your own past and current story and the pain and hurt that come along with this is no easy task. But you're not alone, as you hear in these episodes. Nor has God forgotten you or left your side, as he's in it with you, fighting alongside you through the storms of life. He loves and has already forgiven you, no matter what you have done, and he wants a relationship with you. Your healing, freedom, and growth are important to God and to us as well. Maybe you're considering giving up or need someone to talk to. Here are a few resources that exist that we hope can shine a light into that dark place you're in. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline number is 1-800-273-8255. If you need support but are not in crisis, consider reaching out to a warm line with individuals who would love to talk with you. Speaking to someone on these calls is typically free and confidential and run by people who understand what it's like to struggle in life. Find a local number by going to warmline.org.